the meeting over by now.
Declare the meeting open and welcome everybody to our Waikato Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee. I have apologies from Noel Smith and Sally Christie, and Sandra moves that the apologies be received. And Mike Bunting seconds. All in favour say aye. Contrary carried. We go on to firstly, can I introduce Gareth? And Gareth is Gareth Green has taken over from Langley as chair of the KEG. Hello, just sit down and float with wherever you like. Langley has done many years, and we'll recognise his many years service, not as many as I have, but still many years. He has stepped down as chair of the KEG, but because he's the only one of those chief executives that got any knowledge how self-defence works at this stage, he has agreed to stay on as deputy chair. Gareth on my left is the chief executive from Taupo, and he has volunteered to take over as chair of the KEG. And Taupo are very strong on their civil defence, and they're keen to bring their skills from Taupo up to the rest of the Waikato. Welcome to our meeting. Right. Confirmation of the agenda. You're all happy with the agenda? Yes, there you were. Disclosures of interest. No, we've got none. What were you like?
I'm not going to choose you this time.
All right, I'll help you out. Haraki move and Waitama second.
Longer than 2 hours. That's a bit much, isn't it?
What?
I said longer than 2 hours. That's a bit much.
Yeah, no, we're going for 2 hours. Okay, we go to the confirmation of minutes of the last meeting, which is 28th of February. They are in your agenda pack. You have all read those minutes. Will somebody that was here, Anna Park, she was here, she'd know that they're true and correct record. And Thomas, you were here?
Yeah, I was.
So you'll second it, they're true and correct record. All in favour, say aye. Any matters arising out of there? No, nothing, because they'll come up with general business otherwise. And we go on to changing of the way that we do minutes. Julian, are you going to tell us this, or Dave, you're going to tell us?
It's Dave, sir.
It's Dave. Dave, not a sir.
I'm happy for this to be taken as read. Basically, obviously, technology is moving on, and the way that minutes previously were recorded was that we would write down, not verbatim, but most of what you said, and they were prone to interpretation and or leanings of the writer. So what we're proposing to do now, in line with what a lot of other councils and civil defence groups do, is we will record the meetings, and those recordings will be publicly available. The written minutes become procedural and also include inside them reference to the recording points, so viewers can find the article or sections they want to listen to, so they don't have to listen to 4 hours of meeting for the 5-minute segment that they want. Obviously, if a meeting is not recorded or the sound quality isn't sufficient for the recording to be a true and accurate record that is understandable, we would revert to the minutes being recorded in writing as we do them now. So it's really just a procedural change, adopting technology moving forward.
All happy?
Yes. Through the chair, does this impact on the standing orders in any way? They need to be,
There's been debate for many years as to what the minutes should record. And you get, when you start putting comments from various members of the committee, you get grandstanding and wonderful political statements made, so that the wonderful comments that they make go into the minutes as a full-time record. What is of importance is what was the resolution, who moved it, who seconded it, was passed, and that's going forward. So to attempt to say I'll use his comments and not hers becomes difficult, in which case you have a whole lot of pages of comments that are made that aren't really relevant to the final vote. So it's going back to how we change TLIDs.
A quick question to Chair, if I may. The meetings that are recorded, are they captioned? So those with hearing impairments?
Not at this stage. The captioning that Waikato Regional Council attempted in the testing of this found that our New Zealand accents, where we don't tend to use vowels, drastically changed the context of what was being recorded in the captioning, much to the delight of staff, I might add, they're looking for it. And so at this point, until our vowels catch up with the rest of the world, or they catch up with us, no.
So does that leave us a bit vulnerable in the case of hearing impaired?
If the hearing impaired were to request a section, we would treat it like a Lagoima and we'd provide a transcript or whatever they really need to interpret those minutes.
This committee is not as entertaining as Hamilton City, unless the Hamilton City rep is having a go at me over the microphone, in which case it could be.
An accidental go. It's on the clock there for 5 minutes.
So people are looking for positive information, and therefore we don't have thousands of people listening in. So you're all happy with that? Is that just noting, or we need to move?
No, we need to move in a second.
Oh, thank you. Resolution. Philip moves,
Second,
and it seconds. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carry.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Group work plan, Julian.
So this will be, I'll talk to this one, and I might ask for somebody to help me out if there are any detailed questions. My helpers are at the back here. So this is to provide the Joint Committee with an update on the activities of the Group Office and Group Member Councils in relation to the priority actions in the Group Work Plan. It's been previously reported to you that progress on delivering the CDM Group Work Plan has been impacted by vacancies and COVID. Whilst COVID continues to have some legacy impact on us, we are, however, now making progress towards, or good progress towards the delivery of the prioritised work programme. Now we're able to focus on our business as usual. So this level of report, or the report on the progress, is reported at different levels to different committees. It's intended to be high level because you are a high level group, and you will see a table with some high level overview of the group, or the status of the group work plan. I will make some comments on not all the things, but certainly the bits that I think you might be interested in, particularly when it's red. So on page 16, you'll see that the first action talks about the inclusion of iwi Māori in response and the inclusion of iwi Māori within governance and planning as appropriate. So that is why this is red. It is because certainly in relation to the iwi Māori participation in response, this reflects the complexity of the region. So that requires every member council, so all of your councils, to engage with iwi at local level, and or the iwi that have interest in your area, areas of interest, engage them in the EOC, and different iwi approach it in different ways. So it's not straightforward, and work still continues in this space. The cultural advice that we get as a group or as a GMO, we have historically, this is one of the challenges at the moment, we have historically got that advice for the group purposes from Waikato Regional Council via the Tairanga Whenua team. And what's happening at the moment, as you'd imagine, with all the government reforms and the treaty settlements, etc., the workload of the Tairanga Whenua team at Waikato Regional Council is growing exponentially, and we are competing, if you want, to try and get that advice from them. So we're looking at trying to find some solutions to that, some sustainable solutions that we're not becoming a burden on that team and we are able to support ourselves. So that's one area. You will recall at the last meeting, Councillor Mahuta from Waikato Regional Council was online and she kindly offered advice in terms of the iwi Māori work programme, or the trying to the inclusion within governance and planning, and we were hitting some obstacles in terms of finding a contractor because of the lack of capacity in the system. So Councillor Mukunta offered some to link in with me, which he did along with Councillor Hodge, and they provided some very good advice that has identified some possible solutions to how we move forward. It doesn't affect, however, the update I gave you last time, that once we've appointed someone to do this work, whether it's through a contractor or through another means identified, then it will take 12 months, because probably up to 12 months, because of the capacity challenges that iwi are facing at the moment, because everybody's out of their time for one thing or another. It has been pointed out to me, however, that though that engagement with iwi at the moment across the region may actually, we might be able to piggyback on some of that where relevant, and that would assist us. So that's why it's red. But the good thing is that there is actually a plan in place, and there's just, if you want a transparent update as to where we are. On the good news, you will see that Whisper, which is a public alerting tool, and also a consistent tool for alerting our own staff and pulling meetings together in an emergency. That's been implemented at different rates. Everybody's ready to go in our region, and different councils have picked it up at different pace depending on their needs. But that's a really good outcome for us, that we've got a consistent system across the region, which means that wherever we send people within our region, there'll be a familiarity with the tool, and if one, we're all using the same platform. So that will be good for our communities. The other good piece of work is on page 17, even though it's in green, it's worth highlighting, which is action or goal 411, action 4.4.1, which is there's work being done to build on the Civil Defence Centre project. So it's not just about identifying where the Civil Defence Centres are and being able to get people to safety. It's actually now linking that work or expanding that work to how do we keep them safe whilst they're there? Can we take on the learnings from Westport, where the Civil Defence Centre was able to be set up, but the ability to be able to get staff in to support that over a protracted period of time was compromised because of roads and weather. So we're revisiting our programme and trying to learn from other people's experience. So that's really good. The other good piece of work to highlight is that courses for the civil defence training have now gone back face to face. Some have had to be cancelled. There has been some trepidation from some staff members coming back to face-to-face training, but the projected attendance on courses is starting to show that people are becoming more comfortable with the infection prevention controls that are in place and coming back into training. So that's good. So the other bits I wanted to highlight, sir. I'm happy to talk about anything else from that report, should anybody wish to.
Julian, the iwi relationship, how far ahead of the legislation is that running, and is it going to catch up?
So the legislation is probably due to go through the House next year. I would, before the end of this government or this Parliament, I think they would refer to it, we will have in place our certainly our plan, and our engagement will have been completed before then. There is nothing, so we will basically be hitting the ground running as the legislation is being enacted. So we will be, if you want, if not ahead of the curve, certainly with the curve. We won't be behind. We won't be behind the ball on this one. That's what we've always intended to do. The updates we are getting from NEMA in terms of the direction of travel for the engagement with iwi and Māori, we still continue to be in the same direction of travel. We're consistent with what they're projecting. So as a matter of fact, we as a group probably been influential in some of the conversations and the thinking around the approach that NEMA are taking or advocating in the CDEM bill.
But at this stage, iwi would not have voting rights around this table?
Not at this point in time, because the legislation doesn't allow for it. but given the timing of our project, and I mean, that might be a blocker, that might be an absolute challenge for EV, and that might be a line in the sand for them. I think we can expect that, because it's not a, it's certainly not in alignment, or it's not in alignment with the treaty at all in terms of the true partnership, because there is no voting rights. So it may well be that the approach that is put forward is wait and see. I don't want to prejudge anything here, but iwi might actually say until the legislation is amended and there is a true partnership that is reflective of the treaty, then they wouldn't want to sit around the table. But our project will be complete at or around the same time as that legislation, if it is put through Parliament, as I suspect it will be, is enacted.
Through the chair, I think there's opportunity as well, though, with the elections later this year, and a lot of councils have adopted Māori board seats to have a Māori voice at the table through that transition anyway.
Yeah, that could be difficult if there was a requirement to council Te Apo to appoint their Maori representative to this committee or something.
Yes, but it allows for councils to, if they do have a Māori board councillor who perhaps has an interest in civil affairs, there is a mechanism to help transition the committee with the Māori voice at the table.
With the Tihuia train project, because it basically runs from Hamilton, well, basically it does, runs from Hamilton to the Strand and back again 4 times a day, and it's currently carrying 200 people a day. Note that, up from 100 people divided by 4 trains to get there wasn't very easy to sell. But we went to Tainui and said, you need to appoint who you want as your official representative for Tainui. And they gave us the man, they gave us his name and said, he will represent Tainui on your council. And it works perfectly. But then we've only got one really that we're dealing with. Some of the others may come in and say, we've been left out because they will go and talk to Tainui, because they represent you on that committee. But with a wider regional grouping where you've got so many interested parties, it could be interesting.
Speaking of that point, Chair, it'd be interesting if Māori seats or Māori representatives on the council are speaking on Māori or on behalf of the council. Are they Māori voice in their council? Let's see what Joe looks like. Really interesting.
The 2 Maori councillors that the regional council has on board both say that their constituents are Maori. They got elected by Maori. They're there to represent Maori, and they'll make sure that Maori get a good result out of anything that they're voting on the general public.
They must have forgotten hierarchy.
I'm sure somebody looks after hierarchy.
Well, we do.
You do. Again, for a region, the problem is that you've got 2 Maori seats on the Waikato Regional Council, and the vast majority of population is Hamilton City. So therefore, 1 seat represents Hamilton City and 1 seat represents the rest of the region, to equate it on population basis, which is a horrendous bloody job. However, Julian's got it under control.
So look, I'm confident based on the conversations recently and at the start of the project, whilst we've hit some, we've hit some challenges. I'm confident, having spoken to and the people I've spoken to, that complexities of the Waikato region will be addressed. So iwi will identify, iwi and hapu groups will identify what the solution is, and I think they will provide us a solution that works. And there's a whole host of options that come out of that. That could be people mandated to sit around the table. That could be people who are representative at the table, but not mandated to make decisions there and then. And we just may have to change the way that we do business to say that where we require a vote of note, that vote might take place at the next meeting. So we might discuss the agenda item, and we might actually, there may be those representatives of the, we have to go back and have around what is the position of the multiple. So I'm really comfortable there would be there will be a way forward, and that way forward will definitely be supported by legislation that makes it a treaty-based appointment.
It will be interesting because legislation at the moment says the mayor is the representative on this joint committee. They can delegate to another councillor if they so desire, but the appointee comes here with full delegation of that council. And people sitting around this table can vote on plans, budgets and everything else, and it is binding back on all our councils in the area. All the power that we have.
Yeah, that's good, Dave.
Okay, any other questions of Julian on the group plan? I'm happy with it. That the plan is received, Lou Brown moves, and at seconds, all in favour, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Julian. You're up next too.
I am. So this is in relation to the government reform update, page 19. And the report is an update on the work done by Becca, who we commissioned on behalf of the CDM group to do some work in relation to government reforms. So they were engaged to provide us information and processes that enable us to identify and respond to the government reforms, the ones that are relevant to us. And both KEG and yourselves have established. Now, I've written the word subgroups here, and I know I'm going to get told off by Dave from Democracy Services, but we've established a working group for joint committee and a working group for KEG, so it's not a subgroup. And the intention was of the creation of those working groups was to respond to submissions and opportunities to influence that fall outside the meeting cycles. So the joint committee working group was previously yourself as chair, Councillor Park and Councillor Christie. And what I want to stress here is the previous approach, and the approach I have to say that you've taken as a committee on a number of opportunities for this kind of working group is that there is no formal delegation given to yourself, Councillor Park or Councillor Christie by the joint committee, but it was a working group that fed back to the rest of the joint committee members via email, who were intended to respond in short time regarding their feedback on the proposals that you as a working group were putting forward. So what you'll see at the moment in the report is Becca have provided a matrix of prioritization out of all of the government reforms that are going on. They've identified 5 reforms that have the most linkages to civil defence emergency management, of which we should try and focus on and provide submissions to or influence. And they are the emergency management reform, the climate change response programme, including the draft national adaptation plan, resource management reform, and the local government review. Now, given some of the time scales on the, and these are, you'll see on page 21, they provide us a prioritisation matrix and where the public submissions are required and or the dates. And there's quite a bit of submissions falling outside of meeting cycles. So we discussed this at KEG, and KEG have said I need to look at the GMO report. The GMO needs to look at the Becca report a bit more and bring some recommendations out for the KEG subgroup. That one of the actions also is a decision from joint committee whether or not you're happy with your current approach of no formal delegations, but a working group that feeds back by email with a short turnaround. Noting that, of course, the pattern so far has been 2 weeks. So the government has been given kind of 2-week engagement windows. And there is always a risk, I would not be doing my job better than tell you the obvious, that there's always a risk that when you send out, once you've done the work in that 2 weeks, and you send out that email to members and to provide feedback, if there is some discourse or some or disquiet, so to speak, or disagreement, then we're unlikely to meet the 2-week delegation, 2-week window or turnaround. It hasn't happened today, but it always remains a risk. So I'm asking you today if you are comfortable with your previous approach, if you want to continue in that vein, or whether you wish to seek a delegation from Joint Committee to act on their behalf in that window of opportunity.
Okay, what we've got at the moment works. And it does with whether it's Transport Committee or anything else in there. When you've got meetings spread out and you need to put a submission in to government. And the way that we run it is myself as chair and Sally being representatives of the whole region. If staff produce a submission to go to Wellington on whatever, it is emailed to every single member of this committee. So everybody gets it. It is then said if you've got an issue, if you don't like it, yell out. If you do like it, yell out. But appreciate your feedback. And then on the local knowledge of those three people as to whether it proceeds and goes off. It all relies on the individual members reading the darn thing and commenting back. We had one last month on the Transport Committee where we were submitting to government on the use of the road user charge. And what we were asked to do would be to support the road user charge being charged to the road users being spent for environmental reasons. And I got 3 TLAs came back and said, no way, Jose, we don't agree with that. The road user charge should be for roads only. So quickly went email out again and said, hey, I've got 3 people wanting to change our stand on this. Do you agree? And the others came back, sorry, you haven't had time to read it. Agree with that proposal. Bang, and we rewrote the whole thing, or re-emphasised the whole thing and sent it away. So it can go through the system if people do read it. But it's the only way. I think it is a waste of everybody's time to pull everybody together in this room to discuss a submission that you're quite capable of reading at home. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Oh, thank you, Sandra. And again, the local knowledge coming from Thames, the centre of the universe in Morrinsville and Telpa, there is total knowledge and understanding in the local area as to how something would be supported or not. So,
and I think the time constraint we have in these submissions is the critical issue.
Yeah.
You're operating like under constraint of time from the time that they issue it. And usually put out on a Friday afternoon. Everybody's off on holiday and break, so you don't seem to go anything until Monday. So I'd be happy to actually support that. I think it works, and we get to report to the other end. So we have a copy of our submission that we can actually come, and we can bring that up to the next joint committee meeting if we have an issue.
You're effectively delegated to the chair.
Exactly.
But the chair can only act by that process. Anybody unhappy? Oh, Mayor Gowdy, sorry, ma'am. Sandra.
Oh, okay. I know this is not the time. Oh, sorry. I'll have to take this phone call. But I'm happy, so I'll pick off.
Thank you, Sandra. We are recording this meeting and we'll tell everybody that you were otherwise engaged.
You might want to change the second resolution there, because I don't think that we're going to delegate to the chair that you want to form a subcommittee.
No.
Because this weird subcommittee comes up with these magic things happen behind the scenes, and somebody will ask you for terms of reference to be written and adopted, and agendas to be written, and notifications for meeting. So it might be something like the joint committee delegates to the chair that and one want to do.
Through the chair, we don't need to do that because it already exists. That exists in the terms of reference, that the chair has the delegation in urgent matters. But we've always, the chair has always tried to engage with other members, even in the short term. So
you probably work that out. The second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Delete number 2. Number 2.
It's
Yeah, that one. Go. That's right. That doesn't cover it, does it? Oh, that's receiving the report. But
The legislation covers your delegation.
Terms of rep.
In terms of, the terms of reference currently give you the delegation to go in. Just that.
right, done. Moved. Anna, seconded. Lou, all in favour? Say aye. Thank you. You in favour, Russell? Thank you. Okay, you've got any other questions of Julian regarding that report? There being none, update on government reforms. You didn't update us on government reforms. What's the story with welfare? Welfare is an issue. If welfare goes over to Tiro, MSD, and doesn't come under civil defence, how can a group controller manage an event if a large part of their work is a government department? Who tells who what to do?
So, excellent question, sir. And I'm sure that the NEMA might have been talking about this later, but for context for members, there is conversation at the moment around between Ministry of Social Development and NEMA around who is the lead agency for civil defence emergency management. Currently, you will all know that Civil Defence Emergency Management CDM Group is the lead agency for welfare. That has been in place for many years and certainly post Christchurch earthquakes. And the experience that MSD used to be the lead agency from memory at the Christchurch earthquakes. And the experience found that the demands upon them were such, them being MSD, the demands upon them for their core work were such that they couldn't focus on their core work and the external demands of the emergency. So it was handed over to civil defence. Now, time has moved on, and there is now a conversation, and it's recognised that the Ministry of Social Development has done a really good job in the second and subsequent, the Delta and the Omicron surge of COVID, and they've done a remarkable job in that, coordinating that welfare or delivering that welfare response. So there is a conversation around whether MSD should be the lead agency or not. The conversation is between NEMA and MSD at the national level at the moment. I'm told no decision has been made around that, and it is a conversation between Chief Executive and ministers. What I am told is that if it's certainly on the table, the MSD will become the lead agency again. It is certainly a realistic outcome. And if that does happen, even though a decision hasn't been made yet, if that does happen, there will still be a role for civil defence in the initial welfare response. It just means that the management and the leadership, if you want the lead agency part, will be undertaken by MSD if that's where it lands. So what does it mean for the group controller? What does that mean for CDEV? Well, the devil will be in the detail around what the lead agency is. I'm told that we would still have a group welfare manager, but how the division of powers and responsibilities and roles, we'll have to wait for that detail to come through if and when the decision's made. But it's a very interesting proposal that I'm not sure. I'll talk from a professional point of view. I'm not sure you can use the experience of COVID and they've done a really good job and say that is a good that is an appropriate measure for another Christchurch or a Hikurangi subduction zone where catastrophe is basically immediate, it is a rapid onset, and the demands are significant. But those conversations, I'm sure, will be having those issues and those risks will be being discussed at ministerial and chief executive level at national agency.
Julian, I would struggle if a storm had really gone through the Coromandel on the weekend and created mayhem all the way down there. Civil Defence declares an emergency, and if I'm the poor bloody controller that goes into there and I get told, well, welfare is outside of your gambit because that's being run by another mob, I can't prioritise things and say I need welfare support up here, there and everywhere because that's somebody else's decision, and it compromises the ability of the controller to run the whole thing.
I don't think the intention is to take that immediate. Certainly, one of the lead agency in, if you want, the planning and the preparation will be different from who is responding here and now in the immediate aftermath of the emergency. My understanding is that if it does go, and still that big word if it does go at MSD are the lead agency, Civil Defence will still have a responsibility to provide the initial welfare services for the first few days until things, until the plans and the more business as usual rhythm kicks in and the escalations, not business as unusual, and the escalations for MSD. I don't think anyone's suggesting taking Civil Defence totally out of the welfare space. That's not been mentioned to me, or that's not been inferred anywhere. It's to the contrary, it will be a role of Civil Defence. There's no suggestion that the powers of a controller in a declared emergency are being diluted in any of the government reforms. So if the Civil Defence controller anywhere in the country turns around and says that they are directing actions to be undertaken, actions to stop, then that power is not being, that ability is not being taken away. So the issue will come, of course, is it's around the, I suppose it's around the lead or lead for welfare. If it does pass over, then MSD would quite likely, as I would, if I was given the lead for something, will put their own stamp, their own plan, their own structures around things. And where we might do a needs assessment currently using GIS and using Red Cross as outreach, MSD's approach, as they have done during the COVID, might be different, where they're using a very good contractor called Here to Help You, where it's a lot of telephone outreach done rather than physical outreach. But that's, again, it's that would be the difference, I think, is the leader who would be sitting around the table at KEG would be different. So it would be probably the regional commissioner, or instead of it being the group welfare manager, which is Irving Young, it would be the regional commissioner of MSD, because they would be responsible for that significant.
Through the chair, I think everyone knows that MSD is a Monday to Friday operation, and all emergencies are 24/7, so they haven't got the resource to do the Saturday, Sunday work. So then what you're saying is they farm that out to the contractor, won't just leave it with so.
For yourself, Mr. Chair, I don't know the. So, in fairness to MSD, I think in March 2020, in the first round of COVID, I think the reflection of MSD Monday to Friday office hours would have been close to accurate. In the subsequent, and I'm not here to defend MSD, but in the subsequent Omicron and Delta, they have worked outside of hours. They have certainly flexed their operating model, and they have had their call centres open throughout the week, throughout the weekend, and way beyond the office hours. So they have done a really good job in terms of changing their operating model. Now, it's whether I don't have any concerns about that whatsoever, and in fairness, the people that they have engaged Here to Help You to do the needs assessment, I've actually asked our group welfare manager to have a look at them and explore them, because the experience, certainly looking in and being at some of the executive meetings around, the experience I have, or the feedback I have heard and the discussions I've been involved in around Here to Help You, they've been really effective. So that call centre, they're adept, it's part of what they do. Their welfare and well-being is core to their organisation. So they do a really good job, so much so I've said to our group welfare manager, go and have a look at them. Do we need to replicate? But in terms of the, I do have a, it's not a concern, that would be a too strong word, but I just have a reservation or question mark around it's not the ability to work long hours or work through the week, it's the ability to go and knock on doors when there is no telephone or there is no internet, and the demands are massive like they were in Christchurch. So, but bigger brains than me are sitting down at Wellington at the moment, chief executive to chief executive, NEMA to MSD, and minister to minister, to talk through. And I know these risks and opportunities, and there are risks and opportunities in this, will be being discussed before a decision is made.
Just through the chair, from a total perspective, if we were to stand up an EOC, it would be an interesting dynamic, being we are Waikato region, but if welfare was to sit with MSD, that's Bay of Plenty. So our regional commissioner at a key level would be different from the rest of the region.
And that would be the same for the northern part of the region, that the uppermost northern parts of Waikato are covered by this, I think it's the Tuakau, and that kind of area are covered by Auckland MSD.
Through the chair, but one of the key aspects of the emergency management reform was to clear up any confusion around leadership. Surely, what we're talking about here is creating.
I think MSD is a wonderful provider for welfare services, but the overall control should still sit at the poor old group controller that's trying to manage a war on a broad basis. I mean, he needs welfare. You need to say, oh, you can't do that.
But through the chair, that lead agency would sit as a part of the EOC structure under the reform.
Hopefully, yes.
There's no suggestion. Again, the devil will be in the detail. Through the chair, the devil will be in the detail. But certainly, I've been involved in some capability development conversations down at a national level, and there is no suggestion at the moment, or I've certainly not been exposed to any suggestion that SIMS will change. So it would be the controller would still be the controller, and there's no suggestion about taking welfare outside of SIMS. I know that there was a conversation going back when they recently reviewed SIMS around where welfare best sat, whether it was a function under its own right or whether it came back under operations, for example. But there was certainly none of the options included taking it out of the SIMS structure.
Through the chair, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, but then COVID didn't make sense. You had 5 people up there in Auckland when it came out with nobody in overall charge, and there were 5 people trying to make decisions on behalf of their, from police, from health, from civil defence, from everybody. It was bloody shambles. I'm also conscious that government would love to take over as a lead agency in an emergency, in which case they can direct the council staff throughout the whole of the region to go and do stuff. Not sure how well that'd go down, but if they were the lead agency, yes, they can, through the civil defence model. So is that not going to happen?
The devil will be in the detail. I'm certainly not. But the government, I think, in answer to your last part of the question, the government, central government, could always do what you just talked about now. They could declare a national state of emergency, and I have got no choice as a group controller but to follow the directions and the priorities of the national controller. And if the national controller told me that I needed to find a significant amount of resource and they needed to go to a particular area, then the only place I can seek that resource is through local government. Local government is civil defence, and civil defence is local government. So at a central government level, they could realistically take over. And it doesn't need to be a nationwide response like COVID. Christchurch was a regional emergency that was badged a national declaration. So, and then of course, with that comes national control, and that's why they sent the national controller down there, and then the national recovery manager, etc. So they could do that now under the current legislation.
They want it, they pay for it.
That's not how it works, Sandra.
Well, it jolly well should. No wonder we're in the state we're in.
I'm not arguing with you. Okay, anybody else got any questions, comments, or anything else? We can pass the resolution to receive it. We have faith in you, Julian. Controllers policy review.
So this is on page 24. So this is an update to you on the CAG decision to make changes to the group controller policy. So what I start off by saying here is this is whilst this is an operational policy by nature, it's been a custom and practice of this civil defence group to seek approval from the Joint Committee for controller and other statutory role related policies, because these are people that you put forward as councils, and the Joint Committee then appoint and give the powers. That's the way it works. So these are statutory roles that sit within your councils, even if the powers come from the Joint Committee. So we bring the policy to yourself. The reason for the review is a simple one. It's due for a review, and the changes have been put before KEG, and KEG have endorsed or approved those changes. The main changes are related to developments at either a national level or a regional level, and I put bullet points 3. I've identified what I think are the key. There are more changes than this, but these are the, and some of them are just changing of words to provide clarity, etc. But the key changes of substance are listed there, and they are the inclusion of the CDEM group response framework and the establishment of an enlarged coordination centre. So that never existed when the response framework never existed when the policy was written, but it has implications for controllers. For example, you've got to be a tier 2 controller to be able to operate as a controller to operate in the enlarged GEC, because you're operating over multiple councils. Going back to our tiers of controllers, we've got tier 1, which is the group controllers or the alternate group controllers. Tier 2 are local controllers who can operate anywhere within the region. Tier 3 are those controllers who can only operate within a specific council or specified council, so it's quite limited. So because of the nature of an enlarged GEC that could be operating over multiple district councils, then you have to be a tier 2 controller to be able to operate. So that's why that's been included. The other aspect around tiered controllers is we put clarification. It was implied, but it wasn't explicit, that only tier 1 and tier 2 controllers can be deployed to other civil defence groups. So if we have said that a tier 3 controller cannot work anywhere within our region, then it would not be appropriate. There would probably be a development, or it's not development, but an experiential thing that starts off at a tier 3, that people need to get experience in their own council or for choice potentially. But we wouldn't want to send a tier 3 controller to another area outside if we've not been satisfied of sending them elsewhere in our own region. Clarification has been provided to the controller appointment process, so it includes changes to the role of the council chief executive, and importantly, the requirement to have somebody on the interview panel that is able to consider the needs of local iwi Māori. Probably the most significant aspect that was changed is item 3.d, which is the initial and ongoing training and experience requirements have been revised and strengthened. So it broadens our basket, or gives us an opportunity to have more courses that are recognised by us as a group that qualify someone to be a controller. At the moment, there's only one course. In the current policy, there's only one course, and that creates a bit of a monopoly, and it creates a bit of a bottleneck, and it doesn't provide opportunities for those controllers who may not be academically driven, but have got lots of experience and can provide a portfolio of evidence, for example. We're missing out on really good people. So it expands the qualifications and opportunities to become a controller, but it also, whilst it was implied in the last policy that people had to, it was explicit in the last policy that people needed to do certain things within the year. It wasn't explicit what would happen if they didn't. So there is now an explicit section, or a section that's very explicit, that says if you do not meet your annual renewal, and it's not arduous, but if you do not meet your annual experiential requirements, then you will be given a time-bound development plan to work through to try and get you up to speed. And if you don't do that, then the KEG subcommittee has the delegation of KEG not to remove the appointment, because only you can do that, but to stand the controller down until such time as the experiential requirements have been met. The other bit that's been amended is there was a section in there that talked about the ability of the Waikato Regional Council Chief Executive or the KEG Chair to determine a non-declared emergency on a region-wide basis. And what is done in the amendment is, where practicable, it asks the WRC Chief Executive or the KEG Chair to ensure they engage with the Chief Executives of the relevant councils and to make sure that those conversations have been had beforehand. But there's a where practicable component to that. So they're the main changes, Mr. Chair. So there were others that were more administrative in nature. It's put to you for your consideration and approval.
Questions? Are we still pretty much looking at controls coming from within the local government sector?
That's what our experience is. On the whole, it's not totally, not unanimous. We do have contractors. We have Topo, for example, has somebody who is not a local government employee, but is a contractor and retained on that basis. I think they are the only ones. Everybody else at the moment has a local government controller, but the policy doesn't preclude, as long as somebody is suitably skilled and experienced and qualified, doesn't preclude people from outside of local government from being a controller.
If they're outside of local government, how are they remunerated?
That is a really good question, and we have a remuneration. We've undertaken a review of all the statutory roles at a KEG level. We've statutory roles, and we've got a consistent job description for those roles. So that's for local recovery manager, local controller, and local welfare manager. And we have sized those using strategic pay and said this is what the pay code would be for each of these roles. Now, it is up to each council to consider that it's beyond the scope of KEG or joint committee to tell a council that it must remunerate in a particular way. What KEG have advocated for, continue to advocate for, is that there is a consistent approach that is considered. So the job description and the strategic pay assessment are considered when people are appointed. That could be internally. You could have a tier 3 manager who's given a significantly more responsibility as a controller, and therefore that should be considered for additional remuneration whilst they take that role on. That could also be or form part of the retainer for people outside of the organisation. But there's no way to mandate that. It is a request of best practice and consideration.
Works in theory, doesn't always work in practice. Depends on availability. Regional Council have recently required the specific services of a specific role for short term, and they're delighted to only be paying $150 an hour for the person to come and do it. Starting to think 150 times 8 times 5 3 months. So sounds like a good deal. But there are not a lot of people lining up for the role. They don't have nothing to do for 3 months to come up. However, it's.
But I will take the opportunity, as you have raised it, all the councils, all of your chief executives or KEG members have been asked to consider the consistent remuneration of those people, because it is a significant addition to most people's job description when you add the controller, recovery manager, or welfare manager on. To get good people, retain good people, then that additional responsibility should be recognised in a consistent way. And it becomes very evident, especially if we would have a response here where we called somebody in from multiple councils, and some of them start talking that some of them, the welfare managers in one council, is being remunerated and the other ones are not. And it is just expected to be part of their role. So, but it's something that is certainly on KEG's radar, and they have been talking about it, and it's just a journey along the way. So any support that you can provide as members through your chief executives will be greatly received.
Any other questions? Hugh, shut up, we'll get through this meeting half the time. That the report be received and that this committee approve the new group controls policy. Have a move, Thomas moves, and a seconds. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Johnny. Appointment.
This is just a follow-on, so this is a tidier. So this is to provide the Joint Committee with an opportunity sorry, this is page 35. This is to provide the Joint Committee with an opportunity to review and confirm the list of statutory role holders in the CDM area. So just for some context for you, when you appoint a controller, you don't appoint it to a business as usual role, you appoint it to an individual. So when that individual retires or resigns, and they leave the organisation for whatever reason, they actually still walk off with that appointment of controller or recovery manager. So what we're doing here is a tidy up on the appointment process, rather than saying these are the people in the last 6 months who have resigned or retired or moved on. We're just saying these are the controllers and the recovery managers who are still in role, and we would ask you to reconfirm their appointment. By default, anybody that's not on the list is no longer a controller or a recovery manager. So that's the approach we're taking. I have listed on page 36 the group controllers, alternate group controllers, and local controllers. You'll see we are quite healthy in that space, and we actually meet the requirements of the aspirations of the controller policy that says we wanted to have 17 controllers in total, and you'll read 17 exactly. So that's a good place.
Just through the chair, Mr. Nigel is moving for him to the council, so he just changes. No, stays the same.
So it was a good for yourself, Mr. Chair. Gordon Ledoux, we've had a conversation with South Waikato District Council to say, is he a controller for you at the moment? And this is a really good case in point, or one case. He is a resident of South Waikato, even though he works for Hamilton City. And at the moment, he is happy to continue to be a controller for South Waikato while he lives there. Hamilton City Council want to understand who and whether or not there's a capacity, and who Mr. Ledoux is, and whether he's going to be a controller for them within theirs. So even though he's new council, he's retained his South Waikato.
Quickly, Julie, look at the list. You don't actually differentiate between tier 2 and tier 3. Is there something we should be doing? Just because a local controller, because tier 2 obviously can move to another area. But for us to identify, you haven't really identified. The other thing I just want to bring up and brought up today, Wayne Allen is not here. He was both just playing for the pants. Allen. But I just wondered whether we differentiate, because I can see one tier 3 anyway.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Okay. I can certainly make sure that list is.
Yeah, just allow people, when you're looking at it, to need a controller.
And I think through the chair, just and I'm going to look back and see if Mark Bank can jog my memory here, but all of the controllers on this list, bar the one that you've referred to, were made tier 2 controllers as part of their extraordinary joint committee meeting at the beginning of March 2020 when we went into COVID. So is that correct? Yeah. So there's only so at the moment I would say, apart from just for reference for you, apart from Tanya Winter, because of her business as usual role, okay, then all the others are tier 2 controllers. New appointment as tier 2 controllers at the beginning of 2020.
You all happy?
So the one thing I just wanted to point out here, I won't go through all the legislation where you can appoint people, etc. But the one thing I just wanted to point out, because it's there, it's on page 37. You will note that the group recovery manager appointment is absent. We don't have a primary group recovery manager appointed at the moment. That role or that office is attached to a GMO role that is currently vacant. We've had 2 goes at recruiting into that, and the recruitment market is very tough at the moment. So we will be going to market again later in the year. So we are aware that that vacancy exists, but we do meet our legal obligations, even though it's probably gone on for the best part of a year now, nearly a year. But we still do meet our legal obligations because we have a number of people who are appointed to the group recovery manager role to cover while there is a vacancy or somebody's away, basically, from the role exactly for these circumstances. And you will see that they're on the list of local recovery managers, because the group plan does say that each council will have a local recovery manager. You will see that not all councils are covered. I can reassure you that there are processes in place for the 3 councils who don't have local recovery managers. There is work in place to appoint people. It's ongoing at the moment, and I would imagine by the time we come to the next meeting, we'll be asking you to appoint somebody formally into those roles, such as the progress in that area.
Okay, all happy? The list as presented is the list of the people. If you're not on the list, you can't act.
So through the chair, our deputy CEO is sort of the acting recovery manager, if you like, of the Taupō District Council. So can she not operate as an acting local recovery manager if she's not named in this? Is that what you say?
No, not use it. She can operate as a. She can't use the powers. She can do the recovery work. She can do all the pre-work, or anybody can do the pre-work. If you say they are in terms of the strategic planning for recovery and getting all the processes in place, you could even actually have the person working as a recovery manager in a sim structure. But what they don't have is access to the powers under the Civil Defence Act that are afforded to a recovery manager. So they couldn't do anything around a transition period, or transition notice. So they would have to be formally appointed. They'd be interviewed, assessed against the criteria, brought here for your consideration, and appointed and be on that list to have access to the powers under the Civil Defence Act.
Would you encourage Taupō to go down that track?
I would encourage all the councils to, all the councils need to have an appointed recovery manager. That's what the plan says.
Through the chair, it's definitely work that's underway.
Yes, I know. Yeah. But I would certainly, the bit I would advocate is if you've got people who are not appointed as recovery managers but are good in the recovery space, they can still work in that recovery space, just know where the powers start and stop. The more the merrier. You know, if you're going, we've got people who, it's the same as controllers. We've got people who are putting their hands up for controllers who at the moment are not quite ready in terms of the whatever, whether it's the qualifications or the experience or both. But that doesn't stop them being a response manager or leading a response. That's how they're going to get their experience. That's how they're going to get over the line. It's the same as the recovery managers. They could be that recovery manager, but without knowing that if it ever goes to a transition notice or anything, or we go into a declared emergency, they are not the people who can lead that part.
Russell Smith, you moving? Moved by Narapiako, seconded by Tony. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Second, motion is carried. Nice simple one, Julie. Local.
Just checking. So I'll talk to this one, sir. It's not yet. So this is one of those statutory roles. So this is to provide you with an opportunity to acknowledge the appointment of Debbie Lascelles as local welfare manager for South Waikato District Council. So Ms. Lascelles is the group manager of community and corporate at South Waikato District Council. She's completed the relevant levels of civil defence and emergency management training, including the welfare component. She has been interviewed by the panel and she was successfully appointed. So it was noted by the panel that Ms. Lascelles has a great CDM experience, acting as local welfare manager for Hamilton City, local welfare manager for Waikato District. It was also noted that her significant role as group manager, community and corporate aligns with that of local welfare manager. Now, there is no, this is one of those where there is no legal requirement for you to appoint, but you have asked previously to be informed of people undertaking these extra roles, if you want. Because in the group plan, the operative group plan, it does require that each territorial authority maintain the appointment of a local welfare manager, and this is what South Waikato are doing to meet that group plan expectation. And it's brought to you today so you can acknowledge the appointment.
Thomas, you want to move?
Yeah, I'll move the actually dedicated.
You should be.
Oh, it works across boundaries. Move, South Waikato, seconded by Waikato. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, thank you, the motion is carried. Finances.
So this is just for your information. It's that time of year, so we're here to inform you regarding the budget for 2022-23. So just as a reminder, the budgets are set using the Waikato Regional Council long-term plan process because they are the administrative authority. You have previously approved the 2021 to 2031 LTP submission for CDEM. This report confirms there have been no requests in the annual plan for 2022-23. The budget will remain as previously approved by yourselves for the 2021-31 LTP.
All happy? Mike Bunting, you happy? Majority of, majority. A large chunk of our budget comes from your city ratepayers who are excellent ratepayers and happy to pay for trains and various other things.
Through the chair,
Hello.
just Julian, with the budget, has that taken into allowance the exponential increase in inflation and costs over the last 6 months and what's forecast?
So through yourself, Mr. Chair, we do have a, as I understand it, the way that the rate collection is structured, the rate take increases every time there's a new house built. So the demands on civil defence emergency management because of an increase in population, an increase in household, that is catered for in the way that the rates are structured. In terms of inflation, no, and it will be interesting in the next 12 months as to whether we see a significant increase in our significant increase on our expenditure. Most of our money is around contractors. Most of our budget is around contractors and salary costs. So we're waiting for the Waikato Regional Council who are going through the remuneration at the moment remuneration review to see what they do to the salaries and whether or not they try to address the inflation through the increase on the salaries. That might happen. If that happens, that will have an effect on our budget. It's the same as if the budget we have for contracted services, if the contractors put their costs up, but most of our contractors are specialist services. So it's whether it's consultant, it's probably around the consultants. Again, it'll be interesting to see if that's passed on, those inflationary costs. But at the moment, we haven't forecast to try and incorporate the 6.9% CPI, 4.9% CPI, and 6.9% inflation. We've not tried to factor that in this year.
I can't imagine them not putting their prices up. But is it going to impact enough?
The prices probably will go. Normally, a targeted rate is set on dollar terms and then divided by the number of ratepayers, and that's how you get your dollar terms. However, we put a cunning one through the regional council to say that we will put a targeted rate on a rate per property through and not the total that was in there. So every time there's a development and new sections are created, we get that targeted rate coming into our budget. It's a way that we can keep up with inflation and costs without having to go back to the regional council and ask them to, what we don't ask them, we tell them what we're going to put in our budget. But it gives us increased income every single year.
Yeah.
And it's around about 15%. Isn't it? No, it's not that high. 5%. Langley, what's your growth inflation that you've got in your rates?
Well, for us, it's very low, but for Hamilton's telcos, we tend to use nothing. But
The regional council work on 5% across the region.
well, that's the
Any other questions of Julian on the finances? That the report be received. And I'm full of all in favour, say aye. Thank you. What's this name of punch?
It's the local government elections first on page 42.
Sorry. Jumped. Local government elections, yes.
So for those members who have been on the committee for some time, this will not be any news, but it's to provide you with an update on what happens during the election between the period of the mayor being so going back, the mayor is the member of joint committee. That's the initial starting point, and then of course they can delegate that to another elected member. So in the period between the mayor or councillors being elected and sworn in, mayors or councillors cannot declare a state of emergency or a transition notice. So what gets put into place during that period between being elected and being sworn in is the only person who can declare an emergency locally or nationally or a transition notice is the Minister of Civil Defence. So when those local authority elections are conducted in October, that if you want, that gap that's created in the Act will be covered by the Minister.
Have it moved, Thomas moves, 10 seconds. All in favour, say aye. Thank you. Over the page, change of key chair. You're going to officially tell us that you are seeking to resign, Langley.
It's already happened. There's no seeking.
I think I got an email from him. Hi Hugh, by the way, I've just stood down.
Something like that.
Okay.
So I'll move it.
Thank you, Sandra.
Well, you know, moving right along there.
Yeah, no, well done. Anna Park, seconds. We have a change and we welcome Gareth as we did at the start of the meeting. Right, Ruapehu.
So I'm hoping we've got somebody from GNS. So we have invited somebody from GNS to give us a presentation, Mr. Chair. But look, in the background to this is
Can I, excuse me, can I just butt in briefly before you start? Look, I have to make another phone call. This is really important, so I'm going to have to take a moment out. But I did want to share something. I want to know if you've heard about the changes that Waka Kotahi are looking to make under the Health and Safety Act. And I'm doing this now because I've got to go. But it's about them wanting to have a clear road for road works under the Health and Safety Act. And where does civil defence fit in with that if they need to use the road in emergency? So I'm just asking if you've heard about that.
For yourself, Mr. Chair, I've got no knowledge of what you're talking about there, Meg Gowdy. I can look into it if you want, but if the civil defence needed to use a road that was closed or otherwise, as long as it was safe, if it was a declared emergency, then it would be used. But if it was safe to do so, but I don't know what you're referencing, so I can go back to Waka Kotahi and ask them.
That's all right. It's just something that came across my desk today. But I've got to go and make a phone call, so I'm going to have to take my leave for a short period. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Just as the chair of the Regional Transport Committee, what you're saying is totally new to me. In round six, you're saying Waka Kotahi can't do road maintenance unless they shut the road. Is that what you're saying?
This is something they're considering under current. That's what I heard today. Anyway, okay, I'll leave that with you. I'll come back to the committee shortly.
Thank you, Sandra.
Through the chair, what it is like everybody, Waka Kotahi have to get a traffic management plan for the work that they do on the state highways, the same as like the government does. They've got a new policy which is their preferences for work to happen with a clear road. So the starting point is always if they can take cars away from the work site, that's the preference. Their preference came as the original deaths that happened over in Whakatane about 2 years ago. But that's only if there's an alternative. There's no alternative to the last 8 years, which is about traffic management on the line. So it's a hierarchy. We've had a situation in our district, for example, on State Highway where the only alternative bypass would be about 30k detour on very minor roads. And so they've gone back to highway just control. So I don't think it's a big deal or a big issue. It's just that we're waiting on what they're doing.
And in fact, nothing much changes.
Nothing much changes.
Now, Sandra, nothing much changes. Okay, do we have somebody from the Ruapehu?
Are you there, Julian?
Yeah, who's that?
It's Brad Scott here, GNS.
Hi, Brad. Thank you. I'll just do the introduction, then Brad, we'll hand over to you. So, Mr. Chair, this is a report on the current Ruapehu volcanic unrest. The reason it provides an overview of Waikato CDM Group's roles and responsibilities, and also you'll get an update as to the current state of unrest and what that means for us. The reason why we're doing this is that we have had some queries as a CDM Group from national agencies, regional agencies, and locally regarding what our roles and responsibilities are in relation to Ruapehu. And I can confirm that in the event of an eruption at Ruapehu, the lead agency, if it's certainly confined to the national park, the lead agency would be DOC initially, and then that would be supported or led later by Manawatu Whanganui CDM Group. Ruapehu sits outside of our area in terms of where the most risk sits, and that is why that responsibility lies with Manawatu Whanganui. The anomaly here would be Taupo. Taupo you would probably see standing up an EOC in a response, simply because there would be a lot of comms required because they can see it from the windows. There would be a lot of community comms required around what the risk was or wasn't for Taupo. And you also got the likes of Brad Scott and GNS who are based in Taupo, and rather than having them driving over to Ruapehu or to Manawatu Whanganui's facilities, it would be far more efficient for them to link into the CDM operations by the Taupo EOC and the connectivity that's there. So Tongariro and Narahoe, they are ours, they are in our area. Touchwood, fortunately, they're not rumbling at the moment. Ruapehu is, and it sits within Manawatu Wanganui. We would set up as a group, we would set up our EOC or our coordination centre, certainly in monitoring mode, because the risk to us would be the ashfall, and depending on where the prevailing winds, etc. And that would predominantly be around the lighting utilities, whether that was electricity generation on the rivers or whether that was roading, for example. So that would be the focus of our efforts, but the coordination, we would take our lead from dock initially and then Manawatu Wanganui.
Brad, are you there?
Yep.
Chief Ruapehu here. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. I've got a presentation. I plan to share the screen. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll have a go at this. Can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Good start. So yeah, thanks very much for the invitation to keep you guys up to date on Mount Ruapehu. So just to remind you, Tongariro National Park is the source of many volcanic eruptions, a little bit like Julian just alluded to. Ruapehu last erupted in September 2007. Narahoe hasn't been in eruption since the early 1970s. Red Crater area, there was last eruptions there in the 1920s and 1934. And Tamari, decade or so ago back now, we had eruptions in August and November of 2012. That's just a scene setter to remind us why we're here. The other part of the equation of why we're here is we're responding to unrest at Mount Ruapehu. We're currently at volcanic alert level 2, and we're talking about moderate to heightened, and we have been talking heightened unrest at the volcano. Okay, just a little bit of science background. Regional earthquakes, looking at the last 12 months. We have coming down from the north, we have the alignment through Tongariro to Narahoe, frequently earthquakes in that vicinity. We have earthquakes under the summit of Mount Ruapehu. To the southeast, there's the Waikato hotspot. That's not a volcanic process. It's related to the regional tectonics, but we get a lot of earthquakes in that area. The army make noises occasionally that turn up as earthquakes. And over to the western side, in the national park area, we have a cluster of earthquakes that occur to the west of the volcano. So zooming in on the summit area, just a few kilometres around the volcano, the plot on the left is going back to 2000, and it's the top one is showing the magnitude, the bottom one is showing the depth, and the orange curve is the cumulative number of earthquakes, and the blue is the energy. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Ruapehu in the right-hand plot is zooming into the last year. So you can see we had a cluster of earthquakes in January at the beginning of the year under the volcano, and we've had very little since. Volcanic tremor. This is the noise that's made inside the volcano. It's a continuous ground vibration, and the best analogy I can think of is the noise an electric jug makes sitting on the bench when it's boiling. All the steam bubbles that are collapsing and forming in the jug, that's what's going on inside the volcano. So you can see back in the early March, the level stepped up quite abruptly. Excuse me. We describe it as weak, moderate and strong. The green band at the bottom is weak. The next yellow band up is moderate, and above that in the pink is strong. So it leapt up basically out of nowhere into the strong. It was elevating through early March. Mid to late March, we raised the volcanic alert level to 2, and it's remained elevated, and it still remains elevated today. The middle plot is daily average data. The data above is every 10 minutes. So you can see the amplitude rising through March, April, into May. It has declined, but it stepped back up again in the last few days, and we're still a long way above our background. And the bottom right plot is giving you some context on the last what is it, 17 years of data there. So you can see that this RSAM crisis is significantly larger than anything else we've seen in the last 17 years at Ruapehu. Codolate temperature. The lake oscillates from a high temperature to a low temperature, somewhere between about 15 and 40 degrees Celsius. Currently, it's heating. Sorry, that's wrong. It's a cooling trend, although it is heating the last couple of days. The lake is 31 degrees, so you can see the heating when we first raised the alert level, peaking out at 41 degrees. It's cooled, it's stabilised, and it's come up maybe 1 degree in the last day. But I suspect the weather system going through tonight is going to take that down again. Looking at the heat input, we can solve equations where you look at the rainfall, the overflow, and then you can solve for the steam and gas coming into the Crater Lake. And we do this in terms of megawatts of heat energy. And so you can see the heat energy that's been associated with this event here. We have, like in the early 21, July through September, we had a similar heating event, but it didn't have the other criteria associated with it, like this one. Volcanic gas and Codolate water data. These are mainly just to show you that we are collecting these data. We are seeing carbon dioxide, CO2 from the magma coming through the volcano. We're seeing SO2, sulfur dioxide, and we're seeing sustained highish levels of sulfur dioxide at this time. The good news part of the story, the Crater Lake water, magnesium. If we have a change in magnesium, we have new molten rock coming into the Crater Lake, and you can see the response here in the middle to before the 95 eruption, or back here in the 60s and 70s, the responses. We've seen no response to date in the Crater Lake water, which is indicating no hot rock is yet reaching into the Crater Lake. So adding this all together, we've had rising volcanic tremor levels, we call RSAM. It's now at a lower level, but it's not back to the background pre-crisis. The Crater Lake temperature, it rose to a peak, then fell. It's now stable, or maybe in the last day or so, there's a slight rise starting again. Heat input into the lake. There was a rise, increasing heat put through the crisis that then fell, and it's now on a slowly rising limb here. We've got sustained high gas flux. That gas has to be derived from new molten rock. We've seen no chemistry changes, so that molten rock's not making the surface. We're seeing no ground deformation, and to date we've had no eruptive activity. So just pulling this together, this is our conceptual model of Mount Ruapehu, our understanding of it. We have molten material at several kilometres depth, rising up to around sea level, which is about 2.5 kilometres below the ground or the summit of the volcano. That molten material tends to aggregate at that area. And what we've been seeing is some of this molten material has departed from this environment here at sea level, and I'm coming to this cartoon here, it's rising up, and it's particularly potentially is interacting with the base of the geothermal system, maybe 1 kilometre or 1.5 kilometres below the Crater Lake. That's where we think that the signatures are coming from, this sort of 1.5 kilometres, 2 kilometres depth. Scenarios, excuse me, what's going to happen next? We've several scenarios developed. Scenario A is a very small eruption, basically impacting just within the Crater Lake basin, or no eruption occurring. Based on our elicitations, there's somewhere in the order of a 70 to 80% probability. Scenario B1 and B2 is basically an eruption that gets out of the Crater Lake onto the summit, generates lahars into the Whangehu and Whakapapiti catchments. B1 is just a single event, B2 is multiple eruptions of the same size. Scenario C is B1 and B2 and progressing into a larger eruption, and scenario D is a large eruption from onset. The relative likelihoods, A is most likely, B1, B2 is the next most likely, and we get down to scenario D, and it's extremely unlikely. And the probabilities on scenarios B through D are sort of somewhere in the 14 to 29% range. Just so that people can calibrate themselves, examples of these scenario B eruptions in 1969, all the ballistics around the crater rim, the rocks chucked out, lahars into the ski field, a little bit of wet aerosol material on the cars at the top of the Bruce. 1975 was a similar eruption. The lake level dropped about 10 metres. Ski field infrastructure was damaged and destroyed. And our last event in 2007, again, lahar into the ski field and the ballistics on the summit. What does this look like on a poster? The left-hand one is a poster we've prepared with Department of Conservation. The one on the right is the one that we've been toying with, but we haven't published. But what it's showing, or both of these are showing, is the area impacted is basically the summit of the volcano and a couple of the catchments, the Whakapapa catchment to the north, Whangahu out to the east and around to the south. All of the hazards are basically contained on and near the volcano. Excitement to date. When we have a hot crater lake and we have cool atmospheric conditions, we can generate steam plumes. And if we do generate steam plumes like this one back in the 3rd of May, it triggers a whole pile of public interest. But the volcano was not an eruption. So just closing off, we're at volcanic alert level 2. We're experiencing heightened volcanic unrest, and it's not over as yet. And thanks very much.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions?
Yeah, Brad, through the chair, I've got a question. I've seen a report about earthquakes underneath Lake Taupo. I was just wondering if they're related to the unsettledness of the mountain.
The short answer is no. Each volcano is an individual. The plumbing systems and the mechanisms that drive them are independent. So no, we're not connecting Taupo and Ruapehu at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Brad, have you shifted? You used to be based in Bay of Plenty. Have you now moved to Taupo?
No, I'm live in Rotorua and I work out of GNS in Taupo.
Okay. Brad, thank you very much for your report. It gives us better information. And you've been, how many years have you been doing it now?
47. Couple of hours.
Couple of hours. Okay. You remember some time ago I talked to you about giving a presentation to the Morrisville Rotary Club, and somebody decided it was too far away for you to come. But Julian Snowball, I think, is stepping up in the Morrisville Rotary Club to look for guest speakers, so you can expect him to contact you in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, what we have learned, particularly with COVID, is we can do a lot of things by remote control. And in fact, I gave a presentation to a South African minerals and mining organisation last week. So yeah, maybe we can do something for you, but not in person. Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Brad. The resolution of the report we've received, and it's Anna moves and Councillor Bunting from Hamilton City Council seconds to show that he's still here. All in favour? It is carried. NEMA.
Partnership. So this is on page 49. I'll keep it brief. This is just to provide you an update on the CDEM partnership, proposed CDEM sector partnership charter. It's between the group offices and NEMA. It is not between KEG and NEMA. It's not between the joint committees of NEMA, and that has been a deliberate decision because we want better work. We as the group managers want better working with NEMA. We want a framework and we want a direction of travel, but ultimately We want to ensure the independence of the CDEM group is not impacted on, and you are ultimately the group that sets the strategy for the Waikato, and the KEG are the group that provides you that advice. So what does the CDEM sector partnership do? It's a tactical level document, and it's intended to create a shared vision for all 16 civil defence group offices. It uses the National Disaster Resilience Strategy and the Trifecta work as if you want, as guiding documents, and it provides clarity and purpose to our engagement with NEMA, and that will benefit the sector and our community. So we will agree in principle, as you do on a charter, around the direction of travel around ICT, around direction of travel around work, around sharing resources where we have got we've got a common interest. So we're not all 16 groups are doing a project around tsunami, or we all agree on a single approach, or if we can, and we share our resources. So that's the intent. The important thing for the CDEM group is that I have sought legal advice around the charter, the standard of the charter, and that legal advice confirms that the charter does not set out any rights or obligations, or does not establish any new legal obligations for us as a GMO or NEMA or for the CDEM group. So the strategic direction of the decision making and basically the veto, it still sits with the CDEM groups at KEG. But it's there for your visibility, and as I said, it can only benefit the sector, and if it's done correctly, it can only benefit the sector and our community.
Any questions? All happy? Blue moves and seconds. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. You've received the report. We go on to. Do we have an update from anyone?
Do Todd Miller's on the screen, Mr. Chair?
Todd, welcome to our meeting.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. What a wonderful opportunity it is. I will keep this as brief as I can, but I will go into a little bit of detail on a few key projects underway. So firstly, the Trifecta Program. The update on the development of the new Emergency Management Bill and the review of the National CDM Plan and Guide. The Trifecta Program suite of work is a key priority for the Minister and for NEMA. Bill and policy development. Since the last joint committee meeting, the timeline for drafting the new Emergency Management Bill has been extended. The Minister now intends to introduce the bill to the House of Representatives in October, after the local government elections. The Select Committee will set the timeframes, and submissions are likely to be called for in late November this year. NEMA is aware that the likely submission preparation period, November through to February, will coincide with inducting new elected members and the summer break. Our intention is that this challenge will be partially mitigated by the additional time working through the policy issues now, so that local authorities have a clearer sense of their positions. Where am I? Hang on, sorry, I've just lost my spot here. And right, yep. So the bill will not be a fundamental transformation of the emergency management system, but will instead address a number of identified shortcomings to ensure the system can meet current and future needs. This includes clarifying roles and responsibilities across the emergency management system at the national, regional and local levels, and better enable Māori participation through governance, planning and operational levels of the emergency management system. I will talk to the Māori work program towards the end of this section. The National Civil Defence Emergency Management Plan and Guide, Phase 1, which is scoping, the iteration and co-development of the review of the National Civil Defence Emergency Management Plan and Guide is underway until July. The context of the existing plan, order and guide will be reorganised into a new regulatory framework to make it simpler to keep current and to improve clarity and ease of use. Scope is being undertaken thematically with input from group office staff around the country, including GMO staff. The partnership charter has already been discussed, so I won't cover that. The Aotearoa Tsunami Evacuation Map. To continue greater public safety nationally, NEMA has developed the Aotearoa Tsunami Evacuation Map for the Get Ready website. It uses CDM Group's own data with approval. This is a tool for use in readiness rather than response and will enable nationwide public education campaigns. With this map, members of the public can enter an address, find it, and find out their tsunami evacuation zones. Go live and a public education campaign are scheduled for June 22. The Get Ready website, accessibility improvements for the Get Ready website, getready.gov.nz, went live on the 19th of April and now meets both New Zealand government and international standards for website accessibility. This includes being more accessible to assistive technology in available language and supplying alternate formats, including easy read, audio, and large print. The website is now available in Te Reo Māori, New Zealand Sign Language. From mid-May, the languages of Samoan, Tongan, Traditional and Simplified Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, Japanese, and Tagalong will be added, with more to follow in the future. Emergency Mobile Alert. This year's annual nationwide test of the Emergency Mobile Alert system took place at 6 on the 22nd of May. The test went well, with the message transmitted successfully to all parts of Aotearoa with cell phone reception. Based on previous research, we expect that approximately 5 million New Zealanders would have received the alert, with up to 10% not receiving it, which may be due to their phone coverage, handset age or system settings, or the operating system versions. There is a survey underway which will hopefully give NEMA some insight into who gets the alerts and how to improve them further. NEMA is grateful to CDM groups for helping to spread the word of the test through their own channels. Te Kahui Matara, the Māori Work Program. Te Kahui Matara is a Māori work program established to support Te Rākau o NEMA in being an authentic treaty partner by ensuring appropriate representation and contribution of Māori within the emergency management system. Work is underway to develop a robust and sustainable Māori strategy, and the existing work program is being updated to enable a more future-focused approach. This work is critical and will enable the support the application of Te Ao Māori and Matahanga Māori principles across all layers of the emergency management system and sector, building and strengthening partnerships between the emergency management sector and iwi, hapu, marae and whānau at local, regional and national levels. Māori to determine their own participation within the emergency management system across the 4 Rs, ensuring that they are equipped and enabled to support their communities. The 3 pillars have been identified as a key priority focus areas and will form the structure of Te Kahui Matara. Each pillar represents Pau Whakapāmau, enabling a culturally capable workforce, Pau Whakapakari, enabling effective partnerships, and Pau Whakatipu, improving our emergency management system. Focusing on key kaupapa or initiatives that support each pau will enable a more diverse, culturally rich and inclusive emergency management system. It is envisaged that Te Kahui Matara will be officially launched in late 22. And the last piece I have to reaffirm let me just find it here, what Julian described about MSD. At the moment, we've gone back through our key partnerships internally within NEMA, and the key points are no decisions with regards to MSD taking the role as lead for welfare have been made yet. So no decisions have been made. If MSD were to take this leadership role in the coordination of welfare services, it would have no impact on current CDM responsibilities unless there was a change to the CDM plan in this space. There is concern by group welfare managers about them potentially losing their jobs. This would not happen, as CDM would still have welfare responsibilities. Analysis following the 2 workshops that have taken place on this matter has been focused on creating a list of criteria and looking at the leadership of both agencies and where they fit into and if they are suitable. A memo has gone to the ministers about where things are, and they are looking at time frames for the next steps. The decision is likely to sit with the CE or ministerial. That is all on the MSD space and all I have at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Any questions? Good off likely. Well, we all understand what you're saying and you're going to look after us, so we note that in the minutes. Thank you for your report that your report be received.
Thank you.
Waitangi, can't see. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary. Thank you, Todd. Thank you for your report. Okay, Keith, Gareth, now's your turn. What are you fellas up to behind our backs that we should know about? What are you prepared to tell us, and what are the secrets you don't want us to know?
Wow, that's an intro, isn't it? No, look, I don't think there's anything much to add. You've talked about a lot of the issues today, and it's in the covering report, so there's probably not a lot else to update you on, actually. Other than obviously saying goodbye to Langley, which is something which the KEG didn't want to do, given Langley's amazing service over the umpteen number of years, and really big shoes that I've got to fill. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, it's all in the report, and we've spoken about all the KEG items anyway.
Any questions of KEG? We trust you. Thank you that the report be received. Lou, you happy to move? Thomas, second. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. That is carried. We'll move on to the final agenda item, which is the acknowledgement of 2 people that have done an awful lot for civil defence over the period. Suzanne Bells is here. Suzanne, please come to the table and sit down. Don't sit in the back like Langley and pretend that you're not here. Thank you. Welcome to our meeting.
Inviting me.
You now Red Crossing.
Yes.
I've got 2. Thank you, Langley. Thank you, John. I've got 2 summaries here to acknowledge these 2 people. And if we go back, and it says here for the last 16 years that Suzanne's been looking after us. And in 2009, things changed dramatically with 2 civil dates on there. Civil defence in the Waikato used to be a total shambles. Nobody was interested in it. Nobody cared. It's never going to happen. And if it does, we'll sort it out at the time. I had no interest in civil defence, so I said, well, nobody else wants to know, neither do I. But we were an embarrassment. And at one stage, with Suzanne's help, I put together a PowerPoint presentation that I took to the Waikato mayors and said, I'm going to tell you how civil defence works. And all the acronyms and all the little bits that fit in there, and that works there, and that works there, and that works there, and that works there, and gave them this wonderful presentation how civil defence works. And at the end of that, I said, any questions? And they said, no. And I said, so you all understand it? They said, no, you confused us in the first 5 seconds. We don't have a clue what you're doing, but if you understand what is there, you can get on with it. But we used to sit and argue over budgets. And again, at that stage, funding was the major problem that we had running civil defence in the region. I was at that time mayor of Ruapehu. We hated the group. The group were people that got in our way, and they tried to tell us how to do things over there on the eastern area. And we had Ron White and Basil Morrison and me. We would run it in the eastern Waikato, and group just don't come over around and talk to us. We would debate over whether we would have 1 full-time person running civil defence for the group or 0.5 or FTE. We had 1. Left him on his own. Don't talk to us. We won't talk to you, and you just do whatever you want. That's a big box. We were shambles. So at that stage, we got assessed. Yes, how good were the Waikato in relation to the rest of the region? And what are you telling us here that we went from 15th out of 16th, and I always said whoever was worse than us was bloody disgusting. And that was a fair reflection. We didn't take it seriously. And so it was, how do we turn around? How do we sort it out? And the first thing that happened was that the chief executives collectively said if they didn't sort something out, it would fall back on all the CEOs, and we had to do something about it. And Langley was put up by his fellow CEOs to take over and sort out civil defence. About that time, I said, okay, if you're going to do the side on the kick side, I'll step up and try and sort out on the political side. Suzanne was an enormous help. That she was employed by the ministry and supposed to work for the ministry. A lot of the time, the advice that she gave us, she was working for us and helping us to achieve, not necessarily what the ministry wanted. But without that support, we would not be where we are today. So Suzanne, and it says on the form, if I start there, was our civil defence group advisor from 2006 to 2022. It was quite a long time. Her leadership was instrumental in supporting our group to restructure in the aftermath of the shocking report we got. She's always gone over and above her role and supported us. She's come to most of our meetings. She has been totally involved right the way through. She's made herself available to share and provide advice to elected members, chief executives and staff any time of day or night. You can always ring Suzanne, even when she's at work, and rings me up at field days and says, Hugh, are you at the field days? I say, oh, have you talked to the minister? Oh, what did you say? Suzanne, we really appreciate it. Civil defence in the Waikato is largely today what you and Langley have put together and made it. We really, really appreciate it. So therefore, can we? Which one? Both of them. Both. Can I ask you to come forward and on behalf of the group recognise what you have done for us? Oh, me, oh, bloody hell, all these people that come on, they keep me in line. Thank you, mate.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we wish you all the best in the Red Cross now. There, and I invite you to say any words that you like.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yay! Are we all clapping here? Come on, make some noise.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to acknowledge his very kind words. Thank you very much. I'd also like to acknowledge what you said, Hugh, about like when I arrived here in the Waikato back in the early 2000s, I didn't really know what I was doing either, but that's okay because neither did Waikato CBD. So it's been a journey together, which has been a real highlight for me, especially the partnership that's been extended to me all this time. And I really appreciate the professionalism and the colleagueship that's been extended to me over that time. So I'm very grateful for that. I want to acknowledge too the levels of leadership that I have enjoyed over time. Very much enjoyed my time with Langley. Your leadership has made a real difference here, and you should be proud of that. I want to acknowledge Lee, without whom you wouldn't come as far as you have. I'd also like to acknowledge Julian and the stewardship that he shows in this role as well. And thank you, of course, to Hugh. It's been a joy. And I'm very grateful that you took on the challenge when you did, because I think between the three of us, and then with the help of Adam as well, we've managed to all get it to where it is today and leave it in safe hands. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
So we can formally recognise Langley Capers, and as I said, Langley had no interest. He had as much interest in civil defence as I had back in those days. We both wanted to do our own thing, and civil defence was something we didn't want to be associated with. However, he drew the short straw, and his fellow chief executive said, "You've got to do it." And he took it on and said, right, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly. And so therefore, he was appointed in February 2010. And he said, I'm up for the challenge, and yes, I will do it. And he has put actions behind his words into going up from there. We were 15th out of 16 regions in the country when he took it on. Who was 16th at that stage? Suzanne, can you tell me who was worse than us? She's talking to Libby outside. I think it was Auckland Council. If I got it wrong, I'll apologise. Langley has been recognised by the Minister of Civil Defence, received a silver ministerial award for a significant contribution enhancing the Waikato CDE. Suzanne, who was worse than us back in those days? Wellington.
Which is not really.
That's got head offices down there. The taiaha, a traditional weapon of the Maori, is commonly used when a traditional Maori challenge is given at a poufri. Students of the weapon spend years mastering the skills necessary to use the weapon effectively. We present Langley with a taiaha in recognition of him accepting the challenge of leading the key and to acknowledge his high levels of skills, competence and achievement within the CDE. Langley, without you, it wouldn't have happened. You said, I'll take it on, but you weren't like a lot of chief executives and say, yeah, well, I'll do this, and then they delegate to somebody else and take the glory as it works. You've done well, mate. Thank you very much. Let that to recognition of what you've done. Thank you.
Still no noise. God.
Thank you for the kind words, and I'd be I guess a fool if I said it was, it was on I was responsible. This, I guess in the Waikato, and as Hugh had indicated, we had limited our team ability to do what they knew they could do. And when I came on board, there definitely was someone who cared, because Paul Ainsley, he was frantically trying to do the work of the team that we've now assembled. But we've had some great people involved in civil defence, a number of them in this room here today, who I guess by freeing them to be able to do what they wanted to do, think of Adam initially, Lee and Julia and all of you sitting here, you've been able to move to such a professional level. And so it's been an honour for me to, I guess, help try and manage that and be that sort of conduit between the really great professionals we have developed in the Waikato and our elected members. You sitting at the back of the room, you have to realise that my first mayor was Basil Morrison. Of course, Basil, as council officers, as bureaucrats, we are like Victorian children. We are to be seen but not heard. And that's why I've always approached it. You are our policy, those set the direction, strategy, and we fulfill that for you. So I guess to all of the elected members who have been involved in UQ, thanks for giving us the opportunity to actually be successful in what we do, because that's really the bit we really enjoy. Suzanne, I have to acknowledge Suzanne, because she authored the report. Was one of the authors of the report that identified some of our weaknesses, and I guess it was weaknesses across the country. And normally, when you deal with someone from central government, the relationship is can be a little bit fraught, or where it's very one way. But with Suzanne, in fact, it was just like having a right-hand man, someone on your team that you would always throw all the hardest tasks to. And so, poor Suzanne, I don't know how you kept up. If we had a tricky situation, Suzanne would gently follow us a path through it. She also has the great ability to just subtly put ideas in your head. Have you thought of? Have you done this? Or what about? And those sort of advisors are so critical. I really appreciate the help you've given me and all of those who actually sit in this room. Well, this is a great honour. Thank you very much. It's still around. I'm still on gig, so I feel a little bit again as a board. But thank you very much. I'll treasure this. Special place at home.
Okay, does anybody wish to make any comments? I will allow you 60 seconds to do so if you want to.
Just three. On behalf of the Taupo District Emergency Management, to you both, particularly you, Suzanne, you're so busy, but you take the time to turn up to a TA and give it the same respect that you give Joint Committee and the same accessibility and openness. And yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the years and look forward to maybe crossing paths in the future.
Thank you. Thank you to you both. And Lee in the background. Are you speaking?
Yes,
Certainly, sir. I'll allow you to speak, right? This is unusual for me.
Just very quickly, what's your name? Suzanne, I've got to tell you, Suzanne, I can only describe as a cheerleader with a baseball bat for pom-poms. When I first came here, she did a fantastic job. Every time I tried to propose to either this committee or to the CAG, she actually championed it all the way through those sort of things like what you like to do, which we talk about beforehand. But by God, if we then said, I'm going to do this or we're going to try and do this behind the scenes, she'd beat me with that baseball bat like you wouldn't believe. Through phone calls, and if I wasn't listening to a phone call, she'd come in person and make it a little clearer to me. And I also often describe her as a sort of guy that collects fees for the mafia. You know, the closer it gets to deadline dates, the more she comes to see you, and the more she threatens to break your fingers. No, Suzanne really supported me in those early days, and really a lot hangs off herself and Langley for what's really happened around here. She's been a real driving force over the years. So I just want to say, yeah, which I appreciate your time. It's great to see you on your today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting. Thank you for your attendance. We have one. Who's that on this meeting? You've got to watch that one. We've got one more meeting, which is when before the end of the training. One day to get some track of all these things. We'll just take a look at the ones. We'll let you know. 29th of August. Yeah. That'll be our final meeting for this. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance today. Thank you, Russell and Sandra, both listening in there. Thank you, Mark, for coming. Good to see you here. Yes, yes. Thank you. The latest resolution of there that the presentations be endorsed by this committee and moved. Anna, seconded Philip. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Meeting is closed.
There should be some afternoon tea waiting outside.
Oh, afternoon tea.